He thought he was just lending out an old truck, but the woman he helped was no ordinary stranger, and what she carried would quietly rebuild his broken life. A mother on the run, a man hiding from his past, and a quiet town where hearts begin to heal, one choice at a time. If you believe that kindness still matters, and that family isn't always blood, hit that like button, subscribe, and stay with us. Because this isn't just a story. It's a reminder that some second chances knock when you least expect them. The rain had started just after dusk, thin and icy like the breath of winter testing the edges of the small town of Deerfield. It tapped against the rusted tin roof of Ray Henderson's porch, a familiar rhythm that filled the silence he'd grown used to. He sat hunched on a wooden stool just outside his front door, a faded flannel shirt layered over an older one, sleeves rolled to his elbows. A dull ache throbbed in his shoulder, the one with the old burn scar that acted up in the cold. Before him sat the table. It was falling apart now, one leg warped, surface cracked down the middle. His wife had once sanded that table by hand, humming while the sun came through the kitchen window. That was before the fire, before the silence, before he stopped expecting anyone to sit across from him. He reached for the mallet and began tapping loose nails back into place. Not because it would fix much, but because it filled the air. Then came the knock. Not on the door. On the window of his old truck. Ray looked up, half expecting a branch to be scraping across the glass. But there she was, half shadow, half reflection in the downpour. A young woman, soaked to the bone, holding something close to her chest. He stood slowly, knees cracking, walked to the edge of the porch. She turned at the motion, stepped closer to the truck's window. Her hair clung to her cheeks. In her arms was a child, a little girl maybe 4 or 5, limp and burning with fever. Her small face flushed deep red, lips cracked. The woman's lips trembled as she tried to speak over the storm. "I'm sorry. I didn't know where else to go," she said, voice barely above the rain. "My daughter's sick. The clinic. I just need a ride there, please. Just the truck." Ray didn't move, not out of cruelty, out of memory. He'd once stood just like that years ago on a snowy night, holding his wife while she struggled to breathe. No neighbors home, no car that would start, no help. He looked down at the key hook just inside the front door. He could hear her breathing. Quick, panicked, and the child's soft whimper. She spoke again, lower now. "I'm not asking for shelter, just to borrow it, just to get her help." Ray didn't ask her name, didn't ask where she came from. He stepped back inside, took the keys, off the hook, and walked to the edge of the porch. He tossed them toward her. She caught them clumsily with one hand, the other still wrapped around the child. His voice was flat but steady. "Clinic's on Main Street, 3 miles. Turn right at the diner." She nodded, breathless with relief. "Thank you. I'll bring it back. I promise." Ray didn't answer, just watched her open the door, slide her daughter gently onto the bench seat, and climb in after her. The headlights flicked on. For a moment the old truck was lit like something holy in the storm, steam rising from the engine, the windshield wipers jerking into life, the engine groaning like it hadn't been called to serve in years. And then she was gone. The taillights disappeared into the rain. The silence returned. Ray stood for a long while on the porch, hands shoved in his pockets. He wasn't cold, not really, just awake in a way he hadn't felt in years. He sat again. The stool creaked. The table stood in front of him unchanged, still broken, still waiting. He remembered her eyes, not frightened, but tired, determined, and the child, so still in her arms. His throat felt tight. The rain softened, gentled into mist. Somewhere beyond the trees, a fox barked. Inside, the fireplace crackled to itself, unaware that anything in the world had shifted. Ray leaned forward, brushing sawdust from the table's edge. His thumb caught the groove his wife had carved years ago with her wedding ring, by accident, but she'd always said it looked like a promise line. He ran his finger along it now, slower than he meant to. Maybe she'd bring the truck back, maybe not. But she hadn't looked like someone who lied. She'd looked like someone who ran out of choices. His voice, when it came, was quiet, like he was speaking to the table, or maybe to the ghost of someone he used to be. Hell of a night, he exhaled, long and slow. The wind rattled the gutters, but the porch light held. Inside, the clock ticked. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn called out, lonely and low. Ray sat there long after the rain stopped, and for the first time in a very long time, he waited. The truck was back before sunrise. Ray heard it before he saw it. The slow crunch of tires over the gravel, the engine idling low, like it didn't want to wake the house. He stood behind the kitchen window, his coffee going cold in, his hand watching headlights flicker through the rain-speckled glass. The truck door opened. She stepped out, coat draped over the sleeping child, head bowed against the breeze. She left the keys on the porch rail, carefully, like she was afraid they'd break. Then she turned to go. Ray opened the door. The hinges groaned. "You could have left it running," he said flatly. She paused at the bottom step, wet strands of hair clinging to her cheeks. "I didn't want to wake you." "She okay?" he asked, motioning gently toward the girl bundled in her arms. The woman nodded. They gave her something to bring the fever down. Said it was close, but she'll be okay. There was a silence, long and odd, not unfriendly, just full of things unspoken, like two people both standing on a bridge but afraid to take a step toward the middle. "Thank you," she said. "For the truck. I'll be out of your way now." Ray looked past her, out into the road. It was still raining, though gentler now, misty, slow, the kind of cold that sank in without warning. He scratched the back of his neck. "You don't have anywhere to be." "I'll figure it out. There's a cot in the shed. Dry enough. Got a space heater." He didn't look at her as he spoke. "Just for the night." Her lips parted like she wanted to protest. Maybe she was used to being turned away. Maybe she didn't expect kindness that didn't come with strings. She nodded once. "Okay." Ray didn't offer to help carry the girl, but he watched as she walked the few steps to the shed behind the house. The light buzzed on inside a minute. Later, dim yellow against the blue of early morning. He closed the door, turned the lock, but didn't walk away. By mid-morning, the rain had stopped. Ray was chopping wood near the fence when he saw her again. The girl, Lily, he heard her whisper the name during the night, was still asleep inside, but the mother stood out by the truck, wiping down the windows with an old rag. "You don't have to do that," he said from a few feet off. She startled, straightened. "I figured I owed you something." He let the silence settle, let her think it was enough of a reply. She finally offered a name. "Elise." He nodded. "Ray." Another pause. This one a little easier. He tossed a log into the stack. "You do this alone?" she asked, motioning toward the wood, the barn, the land beyond. He shrugged. "Used to be more. Now it's just less. I know what that's like." He looked at her then. Really looked. Not at her wet coat or tired eyes, but the way she stood. Back straight but not proud. Just practiced. Like someone who had to hold herself together because no one else would. She shifted her gaze toward the porch. "That table up there, did you build it?" "My wife did," he said quietly. "Years ago." "She's not here?" Ray didn't answer. She didn't push. Instead, she said, "It's a good table. Feels like it's waiting for something." Ray didn't respond to that either. But her words stayed with him. That evening, Elise came into the kitchen holding Lily. The little girl stirred, cheeks no longer flushed, eyes blinking slow. She looked up at Ray like he was a piece of furniture she hadn't quite decided on. "She's hungry," Elise said. "I can make something if you don't mind." He hesitated. The kitchen was small, the kind of space that used to feel warm with laughter and a radio playing softly in the corner. Now it just echoed. But he stepped aside, gestured toward the cupboards. Top shelf, there's soup. She smiled, tired but grateful. Thank you. He watched her move, methodical, quiet, like someone trying not to take up space. But she fit somehow. Like she'd been in kitchens like this her whole life, even if nothing about her clothes or posture said small town. Lily sat at the table, on a folded towel to reach the bowl, and took a spoonful slowly, eyes wide. She looked up at her mother, then at Ray. Truck's loud, she said. Ray blinked. Yeah, it is. Lily smiled. I like it. And just, like that, something shifted. That night Ray didn't lock the door. He stood on the porch long after the lights in the shed went out. The rain had stopped, but something else had started. He looked down at the table beside him, surface still cracked, nail heads rusted, legs uneven. Still, it had held up through storm after storm, still here, still standing, just like him. The mornings were quieter, now, but not empty. Ray found himself listening for the soft thud of footsteps on the back porch. Elise rising early, trying not to wake Lily. He heard her boil water, heard the low creak of the shed door swinging open and closed with the breeze. Sometimes she'd hum to herself, almost too soft to catch the tune. Ray never asked how long they planned to stay, and Elise never asked if they were welcome. The house adjusted to their presence like it remembered how to breathe again. Late that Thursday morning, Elise wandered toward the porch while Lily napped inside the shed. Ray sat on the top step, sanding, a length of pine, leftover scrap from an old chicken coop he'd never rebuilt. Her eyes landed on the table beside him. That's the one, she said, stepping closer. The table I saw the first night. It looks like it used to matter. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he ran a hand over the weathered surface. One leg was still braced with a makeshift wedge of firewood. The varnish had peeled away. Long ago, and the center was split just enough to catch crumbs or memories. My wife, he said finally. She used to sit out here. Tea in the morning, book in the evening. She sanded it herself. Took her 3 days. Wouldn't let me help. Elise moved closer, kneeling beside the table. She touched the wood lightly, like she didn't want to disturb what lingered there. She had good taste in grain. Ray gave a soft huff, just this side of a laugh. She was better with her hands than I ever was. Grew up fixing furniture with her dad. Said wood remembered how it was treated. Elise traced one of the deeper scratches with her fingertip. I like that it remembers. Ray nodded. This table's seen birthdays, late-night talks, fights, apologies. The last cup of tea she ever made. He didn't say anything more. He didn't need to. That afternoon, Elise found an old toolbox in the barn. Most of the tools were rusted, but she dug through until she found what she needed. Ray came out of the barn just in time to see her balancing the table on its side. What are you doing? He asked, more curious than annoyed. She looked up at him with sawdust on her cheek. Fixing it. I thought you didn't plan to stay. She stood, wiped her palms on her jeans. Maybe I don't, but that doesn't mean this table shouldn't stand straight while it waits. Ray stared at her for a long second, then nodded once. I've got spare screws in the shed. The two of them worked on the table into the late afternoon. Ray held the legs steady while Elise drilled new supports. She measured everything twice, tongue caught lightly in the corner of her mouth, brows furrowed in concentration. There was something strangely familiar about the rhythm they fell into. Not rushed, not nervous, just steady. Like they both understood silence and how not to fill it with useless things. Lily likes it here, she said softly, not looking up from her work. Ray glanced toward the shed. She seems happy. She's used to being quiet. Her father didn't care for noise. Ray didn't reply right away. He waited, let her keep the pace. She stopped talking for almost a year. Elise continued. Until we left. 1. Night I packed what I could. I didn't know where I was going, just away. She looked at him then, eyes clear and unashamed. You're not the first person I've asked for help, but you're the first one who didn't look at me like I was broken. Ray felt something tighten in his chest, something old, something that had curled up and gone dormant when grief moved in. I know what it looks like, he said, to carry someone you love and not be able to protect them. She didn't answer, just pressed the last screw into place. The table stood straighter, balanced again. Not perfect, Elise said. Good, Ray replied. Perfect things don't last. That evening, the three of them sat outside on the newly fixed table. Lily ate crackers and drew in a spiral notebook Ray had found in a drawer. Elise sipped tea from an old ceramic mug that didn't match anything else in the kitchen. Ray leaned back in his chair, boots crossed at the ankle, not saying much. The wind rustled through the trees. A dog barked 2 yards over. Somewhere across town, the church bell chimed 5 o'clock. Ray looked at Elise, then at the girl. He wasn't used to the shape of this stillness, not lonely, not forced, just quiet in a way that didn't hurt. He reached down and picked up a fallen screw from beneath the table, held it between 2 fingers for a long moment. Maybe, he thought, not everything that's broken stays that way. The next few days passed like breath in cold air, visible, fleeting, hard to hold. Ray found himself falling into a rhythm he hadn't asked for but didn't resist. Mornings began with the clatter of dishes in the kitchen, afternoons with the soft sound of Lily's laughter rising like steam through the window cracks. Elise had a way of moving through the house without taking it over. She folded laundry that wasn't hers, cooked meals using what little they had without asking for more. And Ray, despite every instinct built by years of silence, let her be here. That Tuesday afternoon, the sky threatened rain again, and Ray was out back, trimming the lower branches of a walnut tree that hadn't produced anything in 3 years. His shoulder ached, but he didn't say anything. Elise came out barefoot, carrying 2 chipped mugs. Her hair was pulled up in a loose knot, and she wore one of his flannel shirts over her own clothes. She offered him the mug like it was the most natural thing in the world. Chamomile, she said. I found some in the pantry. Ray sat down, the saw, and took the mug. Their fingers brushed just briefly, but it left something behind. He nodded his thanks and followed her to the porch, both of them sitting at the newly repaired table. For a while, neither of them spoke. Just the sound of the wind in the leaves, the distant hum of someone mowing a lawn across the field. Finally, Elise said, I used to live in a house that looked perfect from the outside. Big windows, white, stone, a gate you had to be buzzed through. Ray glanced sideways at her, but she wasn't looking at him. Her gaze was fixed on the horizon, eyes unblinking. People called me lucky, she continued. They didn't see the way my husband spoke to Lily or didn't speak, the way he kept accounts of everything, how much milk she drank, how many minutes she cried. Ray didn't interrupt. Just let her talk. I tried to leave once. Just packed a bag and walked out. But he followed. Found us before we made it to the bus station. After that, I stopped trying for a while. Her voice didn't shake, but Ray could hear what it cost her to say the words. I finally got away the night he slapped her. Not hard. Not enough to leave a mark. But enough to freeze her. I saw it in her face. That switch. I knew what came next. I knew because it had already happened to me. She looked down, both hands wrapped tight around the mug. I drove for 2 days, slept in parking lots. Then the engine started acting up. We drifted through a few towns, always just ahead of his lawyers or his money. Ray cleared his throat, voice low and unused. And here you are. Elise looked at him, her smile small but real. Here I am. The porch light flickered on as clouds drifted across the sun. Lily's laugh rang out from the shed. She was talking to the stuffed bear Ray had given her from the attic, holding court like a little queen. Ray leaned back against the porch railing. You don't have to tell me everything, Elise. No, she said softly. But sometimes, you just want someone to know. and not fix it. Just know. Ray understood that more than he could say. He thought of the fire again, the one that took the old barn and almost took her. His wife. How the guilt stayed long after the flames were out. How he couldn't look at that side of the property without seeing her silhouette framed in smoke. He never told anyone about the scream he made when he found her. It wasn't a word, just pain tearing its way out of a man too proud to cry until it was too late. You ever miss a person so much? Ray murmured. You start talking to things, table, chair, the wind. Elise's eyes shimmered. Every day. They sat that way for a long time. Two people with damage that didn't show in x-rays, sharing a silence that finally felt honest. That night, Ray stepped out of the house to find Elise sitting on the porch stairs, Lily asleep in her lap. The moon was soft above the treetops, casting silver across the yard. She fell asleep listening to you fix the hinges, Elise whispered. Said it sounded like music. Ray chuckled, barely a sound. Never heard anyone say that about a rusted door hinge. She looked up at him, her face still young but worn at the edges. She doesn't know what's broken yet. That's the gift of being little. Ray watched her for a moment. Then quietly, almost reluctantly, he sat down beside her. I was afraid you'd ask to stay, he said, eyes on the gravel, because I don't know how to let people in anymore. Elise didn't move, didn't press. But now I'm more afraid you'll leave, he added. A long pause. Then gently, she shifted, rested her head against his shoulder. Just for a breath. We don't have to call it anything, she said. Just today. Just this. Ray nodded, slow. He closed his eyes, and for the first time in years he let someone lean on him. The following week unfolded like a patchwork quilt, stitched together from small, quiet moments that didn't seem like much until you laid them all out and realized they felt like home. Ray didn't ask Elise how long she planned to stay. She didn't bring it up either. Neither of them named what was happening, but it was there. In the way Lily climbed into Ray's lap without hesitation. In the way Elise set a second mug out in the morning without asking if he wanted coffee. In the way Ray found himself fixing things he hadn't touched in years. One afternoon, Elise was hanging laundry on the clothesline behind the house. The sky was wide and blue, stretched thin like linen. Ray watched her from the back steps, sipping lemonade from a glass with a crack down the side. She moved with a kind of grace that came from exhaustion. Not effortless, but earned. The wind caught her hair as she reached for a clothespin, and for a second she looked like someone from a memory he hadn't made yet. Lily was chasing butterflies in the tall grass, her giggle high and breathless. It rose through the air like a hymn, impossible to ignore. Found this, Elise called to him, holding up an old flannel shirt. Yours? Ray squinted. Mine. From before. Before what? He thought for a second. Before I stopped caring what I wore. She smiled. It's soft, I'm keeping it. Didn't say you couldn't. She went back to the line, and he just watched, letting the stillness settle around him like dust that didn't need sweeping. Later that evening, the three of them sat on the porch as the sun dropped low. Lily was curled up between them with her bare, cheek sticky with peach juice. Ray had found a small box of peaches in town that morning and picked them up without thinking. He hadn't bought fruit in months. Elise leaned back in her chair, eyes closed, face tilted toward the wind. I haven't felt safe this long in years, she said, almost to herself. Ray looked over at her. You feel safe here? I do. He wanted to say something more, that he did too, that it scared him, but he said nothing, just nodded. Lily yawned loudly and rested her head against his arm. Can we stay here forever? She mumbled. Ray felt his throat tighten. Elise opened her eyes, looked at him carefully. We'll see, she said gently, brushing Lily's hair back. That night, while Elise put Lily to bed in the shed, Ray stood at the edge of the yard. The stars were soft, blurred behind thin clouds. The barn loomed in the distance, just a dark silhouette now. He hadn't gone near it since the fire. Not once. But tonight, something nudged him forward. He walked slowly, boots crunching over dry grass. The barn door hung crooked, still half charred, the smell of smoke long since faded but not forgotten. Inside, the structure was hollowed out. Just skeleton beams and echoes. He stepped over broken boards, stopping at the spot where the loft ladder used to be. This was where she'd fallen, where he'd found her barely breathing, where grief had taken root. He stood there a long time, then turned and walked out. Not fast, but not afraid either. When he got back to the house, Elise was sitting on the porch with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded, then sat beside her. "I went to the barn," he said. She didn't speak, just waited. "I used to think if I walked in there, it would all come rushing back, like a wave I couldn't hold back." "And did it?" Ray shook his head. "No." It came like a whisper, soft, still sad, but not drowning. Elise smiled faintly. "That's how you know you're healing." A pause settled between them. "I don't want to lose this," Ray admitted, voice barely above a breath. Elise turned toward him. "Then don't." Another pause. Then she added, "But Ray, there's something I haven't told you." He looked at her, but her gaze had dropped to her lap. "I'm not just running from a man," she said. "I'm running from the life that made him. My father, he owns Grant Motors. I grew up in a world of power and press releases. I was supposed to take over." Ray blinked. "You're—" She nodded slowly. "The heiress." "Yeah. But I never wanted that world. I didn't leave it quietly either. He sent people after me. Lawyers, investigators. I've been keeping my head down, changing names, sleeping with one eye open." Ray let it all wash over him. The air felt colder now. She kept her eyes low. "I should have told you sooner. I like being Elise. Just Elise. Not a last name on a headline." Ray didn't respond right away. He stood, walked to the porch railing. The truck sat in the driveway, paint flaking, windshield still cracked from a storm 2 winters ago. That truck had been the bridge. The reason she was here. The beginning of everything. When he turned back, Elise was standing now, blanket falling to her elbows. "You can tell us to go, I'd understand." Ray looked at her. Really looked. And he didn't see headlines or lawsuits. He saw the woman who fixed a broken table without being asked, who spoke gently to a child who flinched at loud sounds, who drank chamomile tea from mismatched mugs and never once asked for more than she needed. He exhaled. "You're still Elise," he said quietly. "That's the only part I care about." Her eyes filled with something she hadn't shown him before. Not gratitude, not relief. Something closer to belief. And for the first time, Ray wondered if maybe this wasn't just a pause in her running. Maybe it was the start of her staying. It started with a truck that didn't belong. Ray noticed it just past noon. He was trimming the hedges near the front fence when the sound reached him. Tires crunching gravel, low and deliberate. Not fast, not local. The engine was too smooth, too polished, not the cough and rattle kind most Deerfield folks drove. He stood slowly, squinting toward the road. A black SUV, tinted windows, paused at the end of his long drive, engine idling, too clean, too quiet. Then, just as quickly as it appeared, it turned and pulled away. Ray didn't say anything to Elise that evening. She was inside baking something, her first attempt at using the old oven, flour dusting her jeans like snowfall. Lily sat on the floor drawing a sun with a smiley face, crayons scattered like confetti. Ray watched them from the doorway and told himself the truck didn't matter. Maybe someone got lost, maybe it was nothing, but something in his gut said otherwise. The next day it came back. Same black SUV. Same idle pause. Same slow turn away. This time, Ray didn't wait. He walked to the edge of the porch, arms crossed over his chest, and stared down the road until the taillights disappeared behind a curve of cottonwoods. That night over dinner, he finally said, "You seen anyone watching the place?" he asked Elise gently. She froze, hand halfway to her mouth. "Why?" He set down his fork. "Because someone's been driving past, same SUV. Tinted, doesn't stop, doesn't belong here." Elise was quiet for a long moment. Then, "He found us." Ray's heart thudded. "Your ex?" She shook her head. "No, worse. My father's people. They don't yell or threaten. They show up with silence, with suits, with documents that say Lily doesn't belong with me." Ray clenched his jaw. "They won't take her. They can try, and they'll be good at it." He reached across the table, laid his calloused hand gently over hers. "I've seen what you are," he said, "and I've seen what she is because of you." Her eyes filled, but she didn't look away. "You don't know what these people can do, Ray. Then let them try," he said softly. "Let them come." The third day they did. Ray was in the shed, replacing a cracked window pane, when he heard the knock at the front door. Sharp, even rehearsed. He stepped outside and saw the man, suit, sunglasses, folder in hand. Not local, not subtle. "Mr. Henderson?" the man asked, voice smooth as polished steel. Ray didn't answer. "I'm looking for Elise Grant." Ray stepped off the porch, slow, deliberate. "She's not available." The man smiled, slight and empty. "I'd prefer to speak with her directly." "Not happening." The man held up the folder, unbothered. "We have documentation from the Grant family requesting immediate return of Elise and her child. They're concerned for their safety." "She's not going anywhere," Ray said. "That's not your call." Ray stepped closer. "You're on private property." The man glanced toward the window where Elise now stood, holding Lily behind her. His smile widened. "I'll return," he said. "And next time, it won't just be a conversation." He turned, walked back to his SUV, and drove off like nothing had happened. That night the wind picked up early. No rain yet, just thunder grumbling somewhere far off, like a warning too low to hear fully. Inside the house the air felt heavy. Ray moved with purpose, checking locks, reinforcing windows, pulling a flashlight from the junk drawer. Elise sat at the table holding Lily in her lap, her arms wrapped tight around the little girl like roots anchoring her to something solid. "She knows," Elise whispered. "She feels the shift." Ray looked at Lily. The girl wasn't crying, just quiet, watchful, too still for a child. "We'll keep her safe," Ray said. Elise nodded but didn't answer. Her hands were trembling. Ray sat across from them, the key, repaired table between them, the light above flickering with the wind. "Why now?" he asked gently. "Why would your father push this now?" "Because I disappeared too clean," she said. "No messy custody fight. No signature on the dotted line. It made him look weak. And he hates looking weak more than he hates losing." Ray leaned back, silent for a while. Then, "Let him come." Elise blinked. "You already said that." "I meant it more the second time." It was close to midnight when the first sound came. Not from the front, but the side. Ray was half asleep. In the chair by the door, shotgun unloaded, but across his lap, he heard a scrape, a soft shuffle of boots over gravel, then a metallic click. He was on his feet instantly, heart pounding. "Elise," he hissed. "Back room, now." She didn't argue. Scooped Lily into her arms and disappeared down the hall. Ray moved to the kitchen window, crouched low. Saw movement. A figure, not the man from earlier. Bigger, meaner in the way his body moved. Hooded sweatshirt, gloves. Not a lawyer. Not family. A hired hand. The doorknob rattled. Ray stood, rage flaring past fear. He opened the door himself. The man took a step back, surprised. Ray stepped forward. "This ain't your house," he said, voice like gravel and fire. "And they ain't yours to touch." The man reached forward, grabbing for Ray's collar. Fast, practiced. Ray ducked, slammed the door open into the man's chest, then drove his shoulder into him with everything he had. They fell hard onto the porch, the man cursing, Ray landing, a punch so clean it split his own knuckles. The porch light swung wildly as they wrestled. The repaired table shook as the man shoved Ray against it, one leg cracking again under the weight. Ray growled, reached for the nearest thing, his hammer from the step. He raised it, didn't swing, just held it there, steady. The message, "Clear," I said. He panted. "They're not yours." The man froze, looked up, then, slowly, backed away, muttering. Sirens began wailing from the distance. A neighbor must have heard the noise. The man ran. Ray stood on the porch, breath ragged, blood dripping from his hand, chest heaving. Inside, Elise opened the door, Lily pressed to her chest. Ray turned to them, and for the first time in all his years of grief, anger, guilt, he didn't feel powerless. He felt like someone who could stand between danger and the people who needed him. He felt like home. The sheriff arrived 9 minutes after the man ran. Ray had stopped bleeding by then, but the skin over his right knuckle was torn open and swelling. Elise had wrapped it tight with an old bandana. Lily sat beside him, holding a frozen bag of corn against his wrist like it was a solemn duty. Sheriff Connor stood just inside the front door, tall and weathered, his badge dulled by time but not by neglect. "You say he grabbed you first?" Connor asked. Ray nodded. Didn't give him much of a chance to finish the thought. Connor looked down at the broken porch rail, then at the dent in the siding where Ray's shoulder had hit. He sighed. "I've got a feeling this won't be the last time he tries." Ray didn't flinch. "Then next time I won't be the one bleeding." The sheriff looked at him for a long second, then nodded once. "I'll file the report, but I'd get ready, Ray. If he's a hired man, they don't stop unless told to. And folks like that," he nodded toward Elise, "don't have people who give up easy." After Connor left, the house was still. Elise brewed tea without a word, her hands trembling just enough for Ray to notice. He sat at the kitchen table staring at the bandage. Blood had already begun to soak through. Lily climbed into his lap. No hesitation, no fear. She wrapped her arms around his middle, tiny and firm. "You were loud," she whispered, "but you weren't scary." Ray felt something shift inside, his chest sharp and sudden. He held her tight, eyes burning. "She's never done that before," Elise said softly, watching from the sink. Ray looked at her. "What?" Trusted a man that fast? He didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. But he didn't let go of Lily either. Later that night, when Lily was asleep and the house had gone quiet, Ray stepped outside to the porch. The air was sharp with the smell of distant rain. The broken porch rail leaned outward, one piece of it, hanging like a splintered reminder of what had happened. Elise came out behind him barefoot, sweater pulled tight across her chest. She stopped beside him without speaking. "I should have seen it coming," Ray muttered. "No," she said. "You saw it soon enough." He glanced down at his hand. "Still got beat up by a guy in a hoodie." "Yeah, but you got up. And you made sure he didn't touch us." She turned to him slowly. "I don't think I've ever seen anyone stand up for me like that." Ray met her eyes. They were dark, glassy in the porch light. She didn't look away this time. And neither did. "I've been alone a long time," she whispered. "And not just since I ran, long before. Even when I was surrounded by people, I was still waiting for someone to see me and not just what they wanted from me." Ray felt his throat tighten. "You think I see you?" She nodded, her voice barely a breath. "I know you do." There was a silence after that, long and warm and full. Then Elise stepped forward. Her hand reached up, trembling slightly, and touched his cheek. Her fingers grazed the old scar there. Thin, white, healed badly from a summer accident years ago. "I thought I was done believing in people," she said. Ray caught her hand gently, held it against his face. His voice cracked on the first word. "I thought I was done loving." Elise inhaled sharply, eyes wide, but she didn't move away. Ray looked down. Not because he was afraid, but because he meant every word. "If it costs me again," he said. "If I lose something all over. If I bleed. If I burn." He looked back up at her, voice shaking, but steady. "I'd still choose you. I'd still choose Lily, every time." Elise's breath caught in her throat, and then she was in his arms. No rush, no heat, just need. The kind that grows out of shared silence, out of pain carried too long, out of nights spent wondering if it would ever be safe to fall asleep beside someone again. They stood there a long time, her forehead against his shoulder, his arms around her back, their bodies quiet, but their hearts pounding like drums finally played in unison. Inside, the light above the table flickered and held. That night, Ray didn't sleep in the chair by the door. He slept inside, with Lily curled up on the couch beside the old dog bed they'd filled with blankets, with Elise resting across from him, just close enough that their knees brushed under the throw. No one said anything about tomorrow, about the threat, about what could be taken, because for the first time in years, maybe for the first time ever, they were choosing now, and now was enough. Ray woke to smoke. Not much, not at first. Just a thin curl creeping beneath the hallway door like a whisper slipping through the cracks. Then came the smell. Bitter, electric, wrong. He was on his feet before thought could catch up. "Elise," he called, already moving. He reached the main room as she opened the door to Lily's makeshift bed on the couch. Her eyes locked with his in an instant of silent fear. "The back," he said. "Go now." Elise didn't question. She scooped Lily into her arms, wrapped her in the blanket still warm from sleep, and vanished toward the back door. Ray turned, toward the source. The kitchen, the old wiring. No. Hotter. Brighter. The flames were already licking the doorframe, greedy, fast. He grabbed the fire extinguisher, old but still functional, and pulled the pin. Foam hissed into the smoke, but it barely made a dent. The fire surged along the wall, climbing like it had somewhere to be. The porch. The table. Ray took one last look toward the back of the house, making sure Elise and Lily were gone, and then ran. Outside, the cold slapped him like a reprimand. The night was thick with sirens, some distant, some near. Lights flickered down the road as neighbors began to stir. Elise stood barefoot in the grass, Lily clinging to her like ivy. Both were silent, eyes fixed on the house. Ray stumbled out, the front coughing, eyes red and streaming. His shirt was singed, his knuckles still wrapped in last night's dried blood. He reached them, breath heaving, and dropped to his knees beside them. "She's okay?" he gasped. Elise nodded. "Yes, you?" He nodded back, then looked up. The flames were swallowing the porch now. The windows burst in a quick, horrible sequence, glass like gunshots. The table beneath the porch glowed briefly, then vanished into ash and ember. "What do we do?" Elise asked, her voice small. Ray didn't answer, because for a few moments there was nothing to say, just the crackling roar of destruction, the way heat bends the air, the quiet sob of a little girl pressing her face into her mother's neck. The sheriff was first to arrive. He didn't ask questions, just wrapped a blanket around Elise and another around Lily. Someone from 2 doors down brought water, someone else brought shoes. Ray stood in the grass in his socks, blinking through the smoke, and watched the roof collapse inward. There went the room with the rocking chair. There went the pantry with the old teacups. There went everything that had waited for healing and had just begun to feel whole again. Later, when the flames were out and only smoke remained, Elise found Ray sitting on the back bumper of the fire truck. She sat beside him, knees touching. "They think it was deliberate," she said. He didn't need to ask. He already knew. "Not the man from before," she added. "Someone else. They found a can of accelerant by the back door." Ray looked down at his hands. Burnt, bruised, empty. She reached over and took one. "I'm sorry." He shook his head. "Don't be. This time, we got out." That silence came again. the one that felt less like absence and more like space being made for something real. "We lost everything," she whispered. Ray looked up, toward the charred skeleton of his home. "No, we lost walls, we lost wood. But you're here, and she's here." He turned to face her. "And I'm still choosing you." Tears welled in her eyes, spilled over without resistance. She leaned into him, both of them soot-stained and bone-tired. "I don't want to run anymore," she said. Ray wrapped his arm around her, pulled her. Close. "Then don't," he murmured. "We're staying. Right here." The sun rose behind them, orange light filtering through the smoke. The remains of the house stood like a broken promise. But beside it, something else remained. In the corner of the yard, untouched by the fire, was the promise tree, the little sapling Lily had planted days ago with Ray's help. It stood with its small trunk swaying gently in the wind, leaves damp from dew still alive. Ray saw it and smiled. "Elise," he said, tapping her shoulder. "Look." She followed his gaze. Her breath caught. It made it. Damn right it did. And for the first time that night, Elise laughed. Just once. Just enough. Lily, still half asleep in her mother's arms, opened one eye. "Is the house gone?" she asked softly. Ray reached over, touched her small hand. "The house is gone," he said. "But we're still here." Lily nodded, and in the quiet she whispered, "Then we can build a better one." Ray closed his eyes, and for the first time in a long, long time, he believed that. It started with nails. Ray was sitting on an overturned milk crate the morning after the fire, staring at a pile of half-burned boards, when he heard a truck pull into the drive. He looked up expecting Sheriff Connor or the insurance man. It was neither. It was Tom Larrabee, the retired carpenter from 2 streets over, climbing out of his Ford with a bucket of nails and a coil of twine. "Figured you'd need these," Tom said without ceremony, "and a few hands." Ray opened his mouth, unsure what to say. Tom just shrugged. "Don't argue, this town's got a memory." He dropped the bucket beside Ray, then walked off toward the foundation with a pencil behind his ear, already muttering measurements. By noon, there were 7 cars in the yard. The sheriff brought lumber. Dana from the diner brought coffee and cinnamon rolls. A group of high schoolers from the vocational school pulled up with hammers and hoodies, asking where to start. Ray tried to protest at first, standing awkwardly, on the edge of the chaos, overwhelmed by motion, kindness, and the sound of too many voices saying, "Where do you want it? And we'll take care of that." He didn't know how to receive it. He'd spent years closing himself off, letting the world shrink to one man, one truck, one broken porch, and now the world was standing in his yard, rebuilding his home before he could even ask. Elise stayed close to Lily, watching it all with wide, grateful eyes. Every time someone offered her something, a sandwich, a sweater, a chair, she hesitated, then accepted. Lily ran barefoot in the grass, trailing sawdust behind her like flower petals. She carried a notebook in one hand and a red crayon in the other. She didn't say much, just watched. Drew. Smiled. That afternoon, she came up to Ray and tugged his sleeve. "Can I show you something?" He followed her to the back of the yard where the promise tree stood, still small but steady. She held up the notebook. On the page, she had drawn a house, not fancy, not perfect, but warm, with smoke curling from the chimney, and 3 stick figures on the porch. One had a cowboy hat, one had long hair, one had a teddy bear. Underneath, she'd written in shaky letters, "Our house." Ray blinked hard. His throat closed. He crouched beside her. "That's a good drawing," he said. "Think we can make it look like that?" Lily grinned. "We already did. Now we just have to do it again." He pulled her into a hug, eyes stinging. "We will," he whispered. "I promise." By sunset, the foundation was cleared. Beams were measured, sketches drafted. Elise stood beside Ray, both of them coated in sweat and wood dust, holding paper cups of lemonade. "This is more than I deserve," she said softly. Ray looked at her, his face serious. No. This is exactly what love looks like when it has a place to go. Elise leaned her head on his shoulder. I don't know how to repay them. You don't, Ray said. You just stay. And you pass it on. That night, they lit a fire pit near the shed. People stayed long after the work stopped. Someone brought a guitar. Someone else passed around slices of peach pie. Lily fell asleep in Elise's lap, her cheeks sticky with marshmallow. Ray looked around the fire, at Tom telling a loud story about a broken roof beam in '92, at Dana laughing too hard at nothing at all, at the lights glowing across the field like lanterns. For the first time, Ray felt not just part of something, but held by it. This town, these people, they hadn't asked for anything in return, they just showed up, not because of what he'd done, but because of who he was, because they remembered, because they still believed. Later, when the yard was quiet and the stars were sharp above them, Elise walked over to the space where the porch would be rebuilt. Ray stood there already, hands in his pockets, staring at the empty spot where the table had once rested. We'll make a new one, Elise said, reading his thoughts. Ray shook his head. Not a new one, a better one. Elise smiled. They stood in silence, letting the crickets fill the space between words. Then she said it, soft and certain. We don't have to be lucky. We just have to choose this. Every day. Ray nodded. We're already doing it. He reached down, pressed his palm to the soil where the table had stood. And tomorrow, he said, we build. The house went up slower than it came down. That was the way Ray wanted it. Beam by beam, nail by nail, measured twice and cut once. They built with second-hand wood and borrowed tools, but no one complained. The slowness was its own kind of reverence. It said, this time we're not rushing toward a mistake. By the third week, the new porch stood proudly over fresh brickwork. Lily danced across it barefoot, calling it our castle. The promise tree now had a small fence around it, painted white. Ray didn't ask who painted it. He had a feeling it was Elise. The shed had been converted into a bedroom for Lily, complete with a small window facing the garden. Elise insisted on doing the curtains herself, even though she barely knew how to sew. Ray didn't help. He just watched her, watched the house become a home again. And this time, it wasn't just his. The new table came last. It was made from 3 salvaged oak planks Tom Larrabee had kept in his barn for something worth it. Ray sanded the surface smooth himself, hands slow, every movement deliberate. Elise helped seal the wood with a mix of beeswax and oil that made the grain shine in the afternoon light. They carved 3 initials under the table's edge, R-E-L, not in cursive, not fancy, just enough. They placed it right beneath the porch roof where the old one used to sit, right where the light touched at dusk, soft as breath. On the first evening they used it, Lily set out 3 plates, all mismatched, all slightly chipped. She arranged forks with great seriousness, then looked up at them both. We need a candle, she declared. Ray lit one from the drawer, short and stubby, left over from Christmas 2 years back. He set it in the center of the table. The flame danced like it had waited for this very night. Elise passed around bowls of stew, homemade rolls, a jar of peach preserves that someone had left on the porch with a note. Welcome home. Ray sat at the head of the table. He didn't speak much, just listened, to Lily's chatter, to Elise's laughter, to the soft clink of spoons and the hum of summer just beginning to slide into early fall. When the sun dipped behind the trees and the stars appeared one by one, Lily fell asleep on the porch swing wrapped in Ray's old jacket. Elise stepped into the kitchen to wash dishes, humming under her breath. Ray stayed seated at the table. He ran his fingers along the grain, tracing it like a map. He thought about the first table, the one his wife built, the one that burned, the one that held both memory and grief. This new table didn't erase that pain, but it added something too. It balanced forward weight, a future. Elise came back with 2 mugs of tea. She set one in front of him and sat down without speaking. They sipped in silence. After a while, she said, You know what I like about this table? What's that? It's Not perfect. It's got lines and knots and a scratch on the edge that looks like a lightning bolt. Ray smiled. Lily dropped a wrench on it. She said it was a hero mark. He laughed once, soft and low. I like that. They looked at each other then, not with surprise, not with hesitation, just with quiet certainty, like two people who had been walking toward each other for a long, long time. I don't need forever, Elise said. Ray met her gaze. Me neither. She reached across the table, rested her hand over his. But I'll choose this, she whispered. Every day. Ray turned his palm to meet hers. Then we've got everything. A breeze moved across the porch, carrying the scent of wood smoke and tea and summer earth. The candle flickered, then steadied again. Lily stirred in her sleep. A cricket sang. The wind touched the leaves of the promise tree, now taller, stronger, and reaching. And beneath the porch the table stood. Not just a piece of wood, but a witness. To loss, to love. To a family not born, but made. The house may have burned. The past may be broken. But if someone still reaches for you in the dark, there's still hope to begin again. If this story touched something quiet inside you, leave a like, subscribe, and stay with us. Because here every story is a journey of healing, and every viewer is already part of the home we're building.